It's February, and although January is notoriously the time to create new habits, I would say February is actually a little bit better of a reset. Maybe in January you were able to do dry January. It would be awesome if you were continuing that. It's definitely better for your gut and for your brain to have less alcohol in your system. But if that's not for you, then maybe there are some other habits that you're working towards that we could think about. How do we implement those? This week's newsletter, I'm going to be talking about some of the different things that I think are helpful for the gut-brain axis and things that are not so helpful for the gut-brain axis. And we want to think about things that, like what's contributing to reducing our autonomic nervous system. The main premise I think that's out there about gut-brain axis disorders is that if we eat the wrong food, if we take the wrong medication, if we have the wrong diagnosis, we are walking in a minefield and we are just one step away from everything, sort of getting off track and off the rails. And I think that an important message to think about is that work with the gut brain axis is actually about doing small things consistently, repeating those signals that are happening for you on a daily basis and feeling like you can know somebody else who has IBS and they are doing either, in your opinion, better than you or less well than you. And why would that be? It's not because somebody's missed something about one of the two of you. Going and finding a medical workup and making sure you have a solid medical workup and continuing on that medical workup pathway is definitely a part of this. But finding ways to create small changes so that you don't feel like your body is constantly in this fight or flight mode is really, really important. So, there's a few things that I'm going to be doing this month that I'm personally trying to work on for my gut brain health. One is that I love coffee so much that my first drink of the day tends to be coffee. And my second drink of the day can sometimes tend to be coffee. Our gut doesn't love that because there's a lot of dehydration in caffeine. It's a stimulant. It can also create increased mobility in the intestinal tract. So lots of people like that because it helps you have bowel movement in the morning and then you feel like you can move on with your day. And that's great. Finding that's literally using a certain substance, right? In this case, caffeine, the side effects of caffeine to your benefit for your gut brain health. But I find that lots of people actually who have GI disorders, they really can't tolerate that much caffeine in their system. And that makes a lot of sense. It also sometimes can tripwire, having a stimulant in your system could feel like your body's in a little bit of fight or flight mode. So if your body is already a little bit confused, you're already having some GI issues, and then you add caffeine to your system, it's possible that your body goes into fight or flight mode. Now, that could end in one of two ways, potentially, probably more, but one of two main divisions here. Either it's speeding up the intestinal tract, right? And that's causing you to have to rush to the bathroom, or if you're in fight or flight mode, it could always slow down your intestinal tract and result in having constipation, which is not what you would think of when you're having caffeine. That is all to say that water intake is really, really important. So, you know, a little bit of dehydration, there's no such thing. You're already dehydrated if you even are like mildly dehydrated. So that's increasing stress in your system as well. Again, any psychological stress, physical stress can tripwire that the fight or flight mode, worsening gut sensitivity, changing motility one way or the other. So, trying to get more water early in the day is something that's a really helpful additive to habits that might help your gut brain connection, both from decreasing stress levels in your system, so you're less dehydrated, but also from the standpoint of just, having more earlier on kind of sets you up to feel a little bit more hydrated before you immediately dehydrate your system with caffeine. Like I'm saying, that's me too. So that's one of the things that I'm definitely working on this month. Another is that, I walk with my dog a lot outside, and even though it is very cold here in New York City, getting out for walks tend to be that we're going on a big walk and then I'm sitting for a really long period of time. And it's really tough to feel like I can, combat that and be a little bit more in the middle of it. So, one thing that I don't use often enough that I'm going to try to use a little bit more is my standing desk. I have it for a reason. I think it's a good thing if you can possibly get a standing desk at your office or in your home office workspace. That can be really helpful. But even taking a quick walk, a short walk, and not just doing it, but actually giving yourself credit for doing it, that can be very, very helpful. It's not an all or nothing. You don't have to walk. I've seen a lot of people say, like, don't sit down after you eat, or you have to walk after you're eating. Actually, intense exercise or intense activity after something like eating is also going to dysregulate your system and say, like, maybe you're in a higher intensity state, there's more stress in the body, and therefore you're going to have a harder time down regulating. Um, Breathing is also an important part of this, which, is pretty basic sounding, but there's actually a really good book. I'm forgetting the name of it now, but it may have been called Breathe, literally. And it's about how we genuinely do not breathe in ways that are productive for our nervous system and for our lung capacity. I'm speaking right now and probably not taking a full enough breath. I don't want you to over focus on this. I don't want you to be so meticulous about breathing that it starts to make you feel less well. I want you to think about, how do we activate the vagus nerve, the parasympathetic nervous system, to decrease the fight or flight response before something like eating, or when you wake up in the morning. Inhaling through your nose, exhaling a little bit longer through your mouth. I talk a lot about how I love 4-7-8 breathing. That's inhaling for 4, holding your breath for 7, exhaling for 8. You can choose whatever way you like to do it, but I think it's pretty helpful. And then, one that I'm always, always, always working on, and probably most people out there who are, working on a computer during the day struggle with this, but our screens are so addictive and they're so difficult to get away from, and they are also so entertaining to us that it's really tough to put them down. I'm working on this too, where I really create a separation between when I'm looking at my phone or when I'm doing work on my computer compared to when I want to start with a wind down routine in the evening. If we can help desensitize a little bit or set a pattern with our brain that we're going to have less input from screens and blue light, and just the dopamine impact, the excitement that can come from looking at a screen and having that quick feedback, can be really, really helpful. There are some things that are actually kind of harmful to the gut brain axis that you don't need to go and say, like, I'm going to clean house and absolutely get rid of all of these possible behaviors that I have. But, one that I think about a lot is actually symptom monitoring. If you're struggling with a gut brain axis disorder or disorder of gut brain interaction, DGBI, that is, again, you have to have a medical workup. I want you to go after a medical diagnosis if there is one to find, and you don't have to give that up in order to have this. This is a parallel pathway, it's symbiotic to your medical care. But if we can try to downregulate how focused we are on our symptoms in our intestinal tract, that can be a major help. We also need to think about rewriting the script on how we're eating. If we're eating too carefully, actually, if we are excluding food for a long time and then reintroducing it, that can actually result in our body being on really high alert. So when you restrict types of foods because you relate them to having IBS symptoms, and then you introduce them back in, that can actually disrupt just as much as what you are feeling right now of certain foods sort of having any kind of an inability to digest something or an allergy to something. That can really result in a dysregulation of the nervous system. So, those are just a few things that I'm thinking about, broad picture of stuff that I want to add into my daily habit and some stuff that I want to leave behind. And I would say that it's really difficult to do those all at once. So, it's important to try to do some of that some of the time and give yourself some space that you're not going to be perfect at it. All those aren't going to stick. Some of those might not work for you at all. And some of them might be really helpful. So be open to just wondering which things might be helpful for you. Check out my newsletter, The GI Psychiatrist. It comes out every Tuesday and hopefully has a little bit of information there to help you to navigate through anything that's going on that speaks to you with gastrointestinal psychiatry.